Everyone, welcome. My name is Sarah Avery, and I am the Executive Director of Quanta Change. Thank you so much for joining me today. So today what I want to talk about are those really hard times in life that regardless of any work that we do on ourselves, we're going to end up with some of these hard times. Probably you're thinking about some of them already as I say that. Maybe you're thinking about having lost a loved one, or maybe a breakup or a divorce, maybe a health challenge, either yours or someone else's, a career or money challenge. Maybe it's something really external and more societal, like a big natural disaster, something that's going on in our society that's really affecting you, that's really hard for you. And so what I want to talk about today is how those times can be a bit easier, maybe even quite a bit easier. That's definitely one of my goals with the Quanta Change process, is that not only do we see really big positive changes in our lives, in all areas of lives, but our lives, but also really experiencing those tough times, feeling like we have more inner resources, feeling like we can get through them with less trigger, with less upset, with more strength and more resilience maybe than we've had in the past. So, you know, are you thinking about one of those really tough times for you and thinking, I can never, ever go through that again. I just cannot handle ever having that happen in my life again. I don't think I can make it through it again. So if so, I'm wondering if having had that experience, you've tried some ways to find some help, some lessening of the intensity that you went through in that hard time. Maybe you've done therapy or self-help work of some sort to address your trauma triggers, for instance. Maybe you have done some work to lessen your anxiety or find better ways to work through hard things. And if so, has that helped? Are you feeling like you're more centered as you go through challenges? You have a bit more room in yourself to handle that? If so, that's really great. If not, and if so, that's a great tool to have on board. Whatever helped you get there, that is something great to have around for yourself. But if you're not feeling like things have gotten better, you've done a lot of work and you hit some big life challenge and you are still feeling just knocked over by it, really feeling like, how can I possibly handle this ever again? I don't think I can do this. So if so, you're not alone, and it's not your fault. If you've done a lot of work to try and find more resilience or more inner strength and you haven't, it's not because you haven't worked hard enough at whatever work you've done. It's not because you haven't, meditated enough maybe, or done enough of the checklist of the work that you've done. It's really because the methods that you've been trying have not been able to get rid of the underlying learned distress that's really causing hard times to be so much harder for you. So learned distress is the Quanta Change term for the feeling that you absorbed very early in life, that there's something wrong with you being just the way that you are. As you were absorbing learned distress from how the people around you felt about being themselves, your brain was developing a survival mechanism to allow you to cope with, control, manage, live with, survive with the presence of that awful feeling that there's something wrong with you. And that survival mechanism also allowed you to fit well, sort of like a puzzle piece, with your early caregivers, your parents, your older siblings, the people around you early in your life. And it is your learned distress and your survival mechanism together that become the automatic generating force for the negative situations in your life. And also that is what's behind how you respond to difficult situations in your life. So that also includes how you're responding to external big situations like societal or natural disasters or something like that. So um, depending on which, so there's 6 overall patterns of learned distress and survival mechanism. And at the end of this video, I'm going to tell you what those 6 patterns are and how you can find out for free which one of those patterns you have. But depending on which of the 6 you have, here's how you might tend to respond to really difficult situations. Tell me if one of these rings a bell for you. So maybe when you hit some difficult situation, you immediately feel like I've got to get everything under control. I just got to get this and everything and myself under control. Or maybe you feel like there is a way things should be and I need them to be that way they should be, and they are not that way right now. So I've got to work as hard as I can to make sure that I and everyone around me and all the situations around me get back to that way things should be. And you put lots of effort into getting them back into that way until they're there. Or maybe you need, when you hit a hard time in life, you need to find people who are going to be with you and help you get out of that. Where are the people who are going to help you now, this second, 3 a.m.? Where are they? Who is it? Who is going to come help me right now? This is my pattern, by the way. So that's how I could so readily share how it feels. And so maybe that's how you feel when you hit a hard situation. Maybe you feel like, okay, I know what is going to fix this, and if everybody just around me just does everything my way, let's get it together, people, let's do it this way or else. And you start maybe barking out orders and that's what allows you to try and manage maybe some inner anxiety when things feel knocked off course. Maybe you just throw up your hands and you say, yeah, here it is, here's the next crisis, all right, let me get in there and start overcoming this new crisis, but this is how life is. Or maybe you throw up your hands and just say, yeah, here it is. See, I told you, nothing ever works for me. See, this is just how life is. It's always like this. So I've kind of outlined the 6 different patterns, how they tend to respond to big crisis there. And I wonder if one of those, maybe even a couple of them, resonated for you. So that just tells us what your survival mechanism for dealing with learned distress tends to be. So then you probably, maybe as you were nodding along, oh yeah, that's mine, were thinking, yeah, I know this isn't helpful. Maybe oh, this is a trauma response for me. And I know this isn't helpful. And yet the work you've tried to do to overcome that and come up maybe with a different response or tamp that one down hasn't worked. So why is it that it hasn't worked? Why hasn't knowing that that's not helpful worked? Well, it's because of something I call the rational brain roadblock. This is the phenomenon by which when your rational brain is operating, there is a wall of protection around your sense of self. Your sense of self is a container that stores how you feel about being yourself. It contains your learned distress and your survival mechanism, and also your core well-being. This is the feeling at your center that you are just great being yourself. And so your sense of self stores how you feel, and when your rational brain is operating, you are unable to access and change that core feeling at a permanent level. So the great thing is that even though rational means, or when you've been awake, essentially, you haven't been able to change that in any kind of deep, permanent way. The great news is that the quanta change process was actually designed to address and get through that rational brain roadblock. So it does that by working with your brain during sleep for 2 reasons. One is that sleep is when your rational brain is entirely shut down, and with it, that wall of protection around your sense of self is deactivated while you're asleep. And then sleep is also when your sense of self is getting recharged with how you feel during the day you just lived. So it's sort of like the outlet that you plug your sense of self into at night is how you feel during the day you've just lived. So what Quanta Change does is it allows you to say, every night as you're sleeping, I want to recharge, not anymore with learned distress and this survival mechanism. What I want to recharge with is my core well-being. Again, this feeling at my center that I am just great being myself, that I have everything I need to handle whatever comes along. And so as you do that, as you recharge with well-being instead of learned distress, layers of learned distress are peeled off permanently. And your core well-being expands naturally, effortlessly, to take the space up that learned distress was taking. And so as you can imagine, you feel better. You have more and more learned distress. More and more well-being as the predominant feeling stored in your sense of self. So you feel better. Your life tends to work better. We tend to see positive changes where life situations tend to just work better and more easily. And in the case of what we're talking about today, in how you respond to difficult life situations, here's what I tend to see in a general sense. If you have trauma responses that you're really used to experiencing, or just triggers, maybe you don't identify them as trauma response, but just, this thing is a really big trigger for me, that starts to get less intense and last less time than it used to, last a shorter time than it used to. Things feel less urgent than they used to. It doesn't feel like I have to jump on this right now or else. It feels like, okay, I have more space, more time before I have to act or react or jump in and take care of the situation and get it back to some other kind of state. You might feel in a case where you know how you've always felt like you have to respond in this certain way, you feel like, oh, hey, wait a second, I don't have to do that. And it's automatic. It's not because you and I have talked about you don't have to do that anymore. It's literally you wake up one day and you think, oh, that thing I have always felt like I absolutely had to do, I don't have to do that anymore. Wow. Okay. And in the really worst situations, the really painful situations of life that we're all going to go through in some way, you're going to feel more inner strength, more like you have your own foundation within you that's going to carry you through this, that your life is bigger than this. And this is very painful. This is very difficult. You wish you weren't in this situation, but you have this sense that I am going to get through this. Life may have changed forever in some way, but I am going to be okay at a really fundamental level. So let me give you a couple of more specific examples. I feel like I've heard so much from my clients just this week on this. So one of my clients who's like a jump in and get it all taken care of, get it under control, get everybody back to good person. If you're that person, can you relate to that feeling like I've just got to get it together now? She said, there was this, really difficult situation as she was telling me about what had been happening. I said, wow, that's really a lot. Was your response to it different? And she said, yeah, it really was. In places where I needed to act, instead of just dropping everything that second, maybe just rushing away from work, I took a moment and I got everything together and rearranged for work that I needed to. And I was calm and I went and I helped take care of things, but I didn't feel that urgent need to just jump in. The house is burning down and I got to get there right now. The house was not literally burning down, but, that she needed to just drop everything and take care of it right now. And until she'd taken care of all of that, she didn't even exist anymore. it was like, well, no, I exist, my needs exist, I can take care of that first and then rearrange things and go take care of it. So if this sounds like you, that's how things can change. Your automatic response can be to consider your own needs and take care of those, maybe rearrange things, and then go help as you would and as you will continue to do. Another one said, I've had these sort of intense overlapping situations in these past few weeks, and they were super intense. But what I found is that there wasn't as much trigger. It was less intense. It lasted for a shorter period of time than it really ever has before. And situations where I needed to be calm and collected, I didn't feel inner butterflies. I just did what I needed to do, and I felt okay. So those are a couple of examples in the sort of kind of person, if you're this person who needs to just jump in and get it all back together, you can take a bit more time and space and take care of yourself at the same time that you're helping other people, as you would and as you will continue to do. The other kind of person, well, I'm going to just take one of the other 6 patterns, and that's my own pattern, and give you some examples in a general sense of what this has been like for me. I was the kind of person who instantly started looking around. Who's going to help me? Who can I talk to? Who can talk me through this right this second? Who's going to keep talking me through it? I get off the phone with a friend and I think, I need to talk to another friend. Oh my gosh, I can't do this myself. I need to talk to somebody. I need help. Where's that going to come from? That was my life. Every time I hit a big challenge or maybe even a smaller challenge, the image that comes to mind is just feeling like I'm drowning and just grabbing onto anybody I can grab onto and kind of dragging them under, and not caring about who I tried to drag under either. So truly, that was my life. I have friends now who don't believe me that was my life because it's changed so much, but it really, really was. And so that's what it was like for me. And I can tell you now, when I hit big challenges, they're hard. It's hard to, say, lose a friend or know that someone's going through a big challenge and wanting to help them and seeing the pain that they're going through in the struggle. It's hard to have life challenges. They're hard. But I now feel like I have what I need within me to get through that. I'm okay. If I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm feeling lousy, I'm okay. I can move myself through that. And what's really great is that very often what happens as you go through the quantum change process is that the more well-being that's available to you, because you've peeled off learn to stress, the external resources that you need, the people that you need, or the information that you need, or whatever that external resource is, that tends to become more readily available to you the more learn to stress that's gone. And that has been my experience also. So is any of this sounding familiar in terms of what your response to big, challenging life issues is? And if so, does it sound like it would be helpful to bring some of the intensity down that just makes those times even harder? So if so, the first thing to do is just to find out which one of these 6 patterns of learned distress and survival mechanism you have. They are called the idealist, the perfectionist, the optimist, the caregiver, the defeatist, and the dictator or benevolent dictator. And so the reason to find out which one of these patterns you have is not to just learn a new way to manage it, learn what it is so that you can kind of stave it off as it's coming through. It's really to find out what you're going to be peeling off layers of through the quantum change process so that your natural well-being can expand to take the place of that learned distress, and you can feel better and you can have more of these inner resources available to you. So the way that you find out which one of these patterns you have is you're going to go to my website and you're going to take a free, in-depth, scientifically validated personality test that measures your learned distress, and I will graph it and send you your personalized report with your pattern of learned distress and survival mechanism and what it tends to look like when people with that pattern unlearn layers of learned distress, what that better feeling, more resilience, more inner strength feeling tends to be like, and what that tends to look like in your life. So if that sounds interesting, I hope you'll go to my website and do that. You go to quantachange.com, Quanta change.com, and click on the free report button. So I hope this has sounded helpful and at least a little bit hopeful to you today if you've been struggling when you get into really tough situations. And I hope you will join me again next week for another way in which Quanta Change really can help you feel good being you. Thanks so much.